We're now less than 2 months away from the election, perhaps the most consequential election of our entire lifetime. This does not feel like politics as usual. This feels like something more, maybe even so far as to say, as good versus evil. I know a lot of people in my feed agree with that statement. It's very concerning, some of the things that we're seeing now across the country and across the world. The Biden administration is talking about approving the use of long range U.S. missiles into Russia. It's madness. Madness. Vladimir Putin is talking about using nuclear weapons in response. We're seeing the crime spiking across the country. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Despite what David Muir said at the debates, crime is exploding in the Biden and Kamala era. We have the illegal immigration situation that's completely and totally out of control. We're far beyond individuals just crossing deserts and walking across our border. We are now shipping them in on bus and planes by the hundreds of thousands, by the millions, on purpose, and dropping them off into your neighborhoods where your wives and your daughters are no longer safe. Now we have this candidate, Kamala Harris, who has failed at everything she has tried as vice president and failed spectacularly. She was made the border czar, and she can deny it now, but that's what they called her for years. She was named the border czar. And we've had over 10 million illegal aliens cross the border intentionally. As I just said, they've driven them in now on buses. They have flown them in. They've let them cross the border. They even have an app they can use so they can apply for asylum on the app and get fast-tracked into America. And they are dropped off into your neighborhoods without your permission. Do you think the people of Springfield, Ohio, were asked if they wanted 30,000 Haitians to invade their sleepy little town of 60,000? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And why is it that particularly red areas are getting the most of these illegal aliens? Isn't this an obvious attempt by the Biden administration to flood red states with individuals who would overwhelm their government systems and their welfare systems, to disrupt the vote, to get these illegal aliens to vote and to turn the corner and maybe what would have been a swing state? Yeah, it's obvious. It's obvious. Kamala Harris failed as the border czar. And then they put her in charge of creating EV stations, and she had billions of dollars, many billions of dollars to spend, creating the EV stations across the country. That was supposed to be a big deal. They weren't built. I think there were just a few of them, a handful that were built. And then she was in charge of the broadband effort across the nation. They had many billions earmarked for that. Nobody got broadband. I mean, literally on everything she was put in charge in, she absolutely failed. There is no way that anybody who's a rational thinking person would look at Kamala Harris and say, this woman has got the skill set necessary to be the leader of the free world. Every time we see her on video, she's cackling like a crazy person for no reason. It's not like she's telling a joke. She just is laughing constantly. In her rally speech in Greensboro, she was laughing the entire time. The entire speech, she's laughing. It's beyond weird, folks. It's creepy. And then she finally did an interview, small town interview. And it was amazingly cringe. And once again, just like at the debate, the interviewer asked her what her answer was specifically to deal with inflation. Let me play it for you. Here's what she said. Here we go.
When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are one or two specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. She was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community of hardworking people, construction workers and nurses and teachers. And I try to explain to some people who may not have had the same experience, but a lot of people will relate to this. I grew up in a neighborhood of folks who were very proud of their lawn, and I was raised to believe and to know that all people deserve dignity, and that we as Americans have a beautiful character. We have ambitions and aspirations and dreams, but not everyone necessarily has access to the resources that can help them fuel those dreams and ambitions. So when I talk about building an opportunity economy, it is very much with the mind of investing in the ambitions and aspirations and the incredible work ethic of the American people, and creating opportunity for people, for example, to start a small business.
Unbelievable. If you were listening to that and hoping to hear an answer to the question, what are some specifics you would do to bring down inflation? You were out of luck. She did not answer the question. When he asks her how she's going to bring down inflation, she starts talking about how she was raised a middle-class kid surrounded by construction workers and teachers. It's unbelievable, folks. And by the way, she was not raised a middle-class kid. She was raised in a little town called Westmount. You heard of Westmount before? It's in Montreal. It's one of the richest, most upscale neighborhoods in all of Canada. This is what she's calling a middle-class neighborhood, where she's surrounded by teachers and nurses and construction workers. These are multi-million-dollar homes. That's where she was raised from age 12 to age 17. Now, she may have been in a middle-class neighborhood when she was a child, but when you're a kid, you have no sense of social status around you. Okay, it's just your neighborhood. You can live in the dumpiest place in the world. It's just home. You don't care. But when you get older, you start to notice these things. And age 12 to 17, those formative years, she lived in one of the richest neighborhoods in all of Canada. And yet she continues to tell the lie. Oh, I was raised a middle-class kid. Boy, it was rough. The rough streets. She's lying. She's lying about that. And that's always her go-to instead of explaining how she's going to bring down inflation. Because I'm telling you what, Kamala Harris does not understand what causes inflation. Does not understand what causes inflation. Does not understand how to bring it down. Because if she did, she would have already done it. She's had 4 years to do something about inflation. You know what they did about inflation? They caused inflation because Joe Biden, on his first day, he ended the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, right? And then he started cutting off leases for people to, drill for oil. His intention was to force us out of oil and gas by making it too expensive, so we would be forced into EVs. And EVs are fine; they're perhaps the future, but you can't force people in that before the technology and the infrastructure is ready. So oil went from about $45 a barrel when Trump was in office, up to over $150 a barrel under Joe Biden. And it's not just the price of the pump. Everything is made from oil. Plastics, everything is made from oil. And then they had the supply chain crisis under Buttigieg. I've been alive for 64 years. I've never heard of America having a supply chain crisis, ever. We had it under Buttigieg. So combine high oil prices with a supply chain crisis. And then I think Joe Biden, didn't he increase the money supply by 40% or something in the first year? You add all those things together, you explode the money supply, what do you get? Massive inflation. When Joe Biden took over, inflation under Trump was 1.4%. He spiked it over 9% in just 18 months. And the Fed was saying, oh, it's just transitory. And it's like inflation is like the climate. It's not transitory. It's not weather, okay? It's a big trend. And they fed it completely with this whole, new Green Deal and all this stuff. All that's extremely inflationary, dumping all this money into the American economy, monopoly money, just printing money and dumping it. They had no idea how to fix that until the Fed finally come in and just keep raising interest rates and raising interest rates. I think the prime rate when Trump left office was something like 3.7%, and it went up to over 8%, I believe. I think that's right. And nobody can afford to buy a house anymore because the mortgages are too high. The American dream, young family with one kid, maybe a child on the way, that would normally have been able to buy a house can no longer buy a house because they're too expensive. And Kamala Harris says, oh, well, I'll give you $25,000 as a down payment. All that's going to do is increase the price of the houses by $25,000. A down payment is not just to pay for the house. The down payment is to show the lender that you had the financial wherewithal to not only save up $25,000, but that you'll have skin in the game so that you're not going to back out on that mortgage because you don't want to lose your $25,000. She completely misses the point. She doesn't understand the first thing about economics. Doesn't understand the first thing about inflation. And so when they ask her, how are you going to bring down inflation? She doesn't know how to answer because she doesn't understand what causes inflation. This is a woman running to be president of the United States. She has no idea. And she grew up from age 12 to 17. This is confirmed fact. I'm not making this up. In Westmount, Montreal, one of the richest, tawniest, most upscale neighborhoods in all of Canada, and she's calling it middle class. That's just a blatant lie. This is what we're up against, folks. This is what we're up against. And the pollsters, of course, they're all coming out with these polls. Oh, Kamala's way ahead, 5 points ahead now. You have the pollsters like Morning Consult and Ipsos that are these internet panel polls. You know what an internet panel poll is? That's where they sort of have like volunteers and they pull them all together and they all volunteer to be part of this poll. And they, do this internet thing. Well, that's not a random sample. A random sample is where you call people on the phone. But they do these internet panels because it's much cheaper. Because to reach 100,000 people, to reach 1,000 people on the phone for a random internet phone poll, you have to make 100,000 phone calls. It's extremely expensive. One of these internet polls, these internet samples, I doubt it costs much of anything. And you get to have this huge 4,000 likely voters. It's garbage. Garbage. It is not a random sample. The only way a poll of 800,000 people can represent 250 million voters statistically is if it is a random sample, scientifically random sample. These internet panels are nothing like a random sample. And so Ipsos and Morning Consult that both come out with Kamala 5 points ahead are internet panels. They're garbage. Just throw them out. And then we had Daily News come out. I believe that's who it was. New York Post. New York Post came out. And they published a poll that was a D+8 sample. Now, Gallup has adjusted his estimate that the marketplace has gone from R+2 to D+1. Why did it change? Well, because, Biden's out of the picture now. A lot of people were depressed about Biden, so they weren't saying they were Democrats. Biden's out of the picture now, so more people are saying they're Democrats. So basically it's tied, but D+1. But this poll was D+8, so that's a net D+7 poll. And Kamala only won the poll by 3 points. That means in a real poll, a D+1 poll, Trump is winning that poll, going away. And this is one of the reasons why Polymarket, which is the betting site, hasn't budged at all for the last, 3 or 4 days, because they know these polls are garbage. They know it's crap. It's just propaganda. Internet panel polls. Give me a break. Whatever happened to, random sampling, phone polls, a real poll? They don't do that anymore. because they have a desired result in mind. Folks, I'll tell you what, that Kamala video absolutely went viral. So let's hit some of the other news that happened towards the end of the week here. One of the things that happened during the debate was that Donald Trump said that crime is spiking under Joe Biden. And David Muir, Mr. Condescending himself, steps in and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, President Trump. According to the FBI, crime is going down." Now, think about it. How is it possible that you would let 10 million illegal aliens, many let out of the prisons, many let out of insane asylums, from south of the border, come across our border with no visible means of support, mostly young fighting age young men, gang members, drug runners, child sex traffickers? How is it possible that you would invade our country with 10 million? You know, 10 million is like the population of 10 of our biggest cities, not New York City, but even Los Angeles, 10 of our biggest cities all together. I mean, it's a lot of people. How is it possible you would let this many people from these medieval cultures where rape and murder and crime and burglary are just a daily fact of life? How is it possible that you would let these people in and you would have a decrease in crime? It's not possible. It's a non sequitur. It makes no sense. And now we have new information that's come out that once again Donald Trump was proven right. How often does that happen, right? Media says, "Oh, he's lying." It ends up being true. Read to you from this statement from Donald Trump. It says, "Massive news. The Department of Justice has just released brand new crime data showing I was absolutely and completely right at the debate. In fact, the data is even worse than we could have imagined. Compared to 2020, violent crime is up 40%. Rape is up 42%. Aggravated assaults are up 55%. Violent crime with a weapon is up 56%. Violent attackers on strangers are up 61%. Car theft is up 42%. And the most serious forms of violent crime are up 55%. Our cities are under siege. And this does not include the migrant crime and migrant rape spree that has overtaken our cities in recent months. Kamala, crime is destroying America and gangs are taking over." Once again, Trump was proven correct. And there was the other issue they fact-checked him on, where Trump said that they're aborting babies after birth. And they came in and said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. There's no state in America in which that is illegal." And I'm like, do you people do any research at all, at any level? Because even the simplest search would have shown that several times Republicans have brought up a bill that would protect the life of a child who was born alive during an abortion and would force the doctor to provide life-saving care for that child. And every time, the Democrats, to a man and to a woman, prevented that bill from even coming up from a vote. So what Donald Trump said is true. That you do have abortion after live birth. If a baby is born alive as a result of an abortion, they just leave it there off to the side to die, to suffer and die. Maybe they throw it in a trash can. I don't know what they do. It's horrendous. It's barbaric. And yet they denied it. They said Donald Trump was lying. No, they were lying. This is what the Democrats do, is they attack you for what they are doing. It's always been their methodology. That's their MO. That's their MO. Unbelievable. Yeah, this crime data is amazing. And this was, I think they polled like 150,000 people on this crime data. It's just absolutely crazy. Let me see if I can find the number here. 150,000 households. 150,000 households they polled. They get this crime data. And the reason why the FBI does not have the proper crime data is people are not reporting crimes to their police the way they did, and the police are not reporting crimes to the FBI the way they once did. It's very misleading. It's incorrect data. This is the correct data. This is from the real people. This is a massive sample. And crime is off the chart. Crime is off the charts. And then when ABC News was reached out to for comment on the story, guess what? They had no comment. Where's the apology to Donald Trump? We have no comment. We have no comment. Next up, this is scary. Union for Postal Workers who will handle ballots endorses Kamala Trump. What in the world are government unions doing endorsing presidential candidates? I don't understand this. I can understand regular unions, trade unions doing it, but government unions endorsing presidential candidates? So the union representing the nation's postal workers who will handle millions of ballots as part of a mass mail vote by mail system, endorsed President or Vice President Kamala Harris for president on Thursday. Voters are being asked to trust an election system in which a key part of the process is controlled by an organization loyal to one candidate. You know, one thing that I heard about, maybe this is a rumor, maybe this is true, but I heard what was happening in 2020 was these Democrat operatives would go into these big projects, these big apartment buildings, all these low-income people live. And they would go through and they'd be registering everybody to vote. But when they registered to vote, they would leave their apartment number off the registration. And then they would mail all those registrations into the post office. And the registrations and the ballots were returned as undeliverable because it had the street address for the building, but not the apartment number. The ballots would come back. They had an operative working in the post office that would collect all those ballots and give them to these Democrat ballot harvesters, these operatives, and they would fill out the ballots all for Joe Biden and send them in. This is who we've got here in the post office. I don't know, folks. We're going to need God's blessing. We're going to need God's blessing, and we're going to need to be watching very carefully in the RNC. All those lawyers we got, all those volunteers we got to be watching this with an eagle eye, because you cannot let this deal take place and then hope to argue it in the courts afterwards. You have to prevent it. You can't let that horse out of the barn. You can't let that genie out of the bottle, because you'll never put them back in, because the courts have shown they don't want to get involved with electing presidents. See what else we have here. Mexican government is filling up buses and bringing people from Mexico and other southern, South American countries and busing them to our border using this app. It says Mexican government buses migrants to the U.S. border as illegal immigration becomes top election issue. Mexican government has started busing migrants to the U.S. border if they have appointments under a controversial use of a phone app implemented by the Biden administration that allows migrants to be paroled into the United States. Not only has Joe Biden and Kamala Harris not worked to prevent illegal immigration, they have made it easier by giving them a phone app that's a ticket to ride in the United States. And why are people from South America seeking asylum in America when they could just seek asylum in Mexico? If they're scared of what's happening in their country, just go to Mexico and seek asylum. But no, they're coming to America. Talk about an attractive hazard. They are begging for these people to come here. And why does Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats want so badly for these illegals to be here? It's wiping out the budgets of these, New York and all these places, Chicago. These people are overrunning the budgets. They're spending a fortune on these people. And why would they do that? Because they want them to vote. Because they're the same people that are voting against the legislation that would prevent illegals from registering to vote. Like, oh, no, it's already illegal for them to register to vote. They won't. It's like, oh, really? So we're going to trust illegals who are here illegally, who have no respect for our Constitution by breaking our laws. The fact they're even here is breaking the law. Suddenly they're going to start obeying the law. And they don't have to worry about being caught, because if they register to vote and they get sent an absentee ballot, all they do is they get that absentee ballot to one of these ballot harvesters and they vote for them. I guarantee you that's their plan. So, Mexican government shipping people here, shipping illegals here. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Let's see. I'm just looking down through the news to see if there's anything else we can talk about. Yeah, this is a big deal. Trump pledges an end to taxes on overtime. This is going to affect the blue collar workers, shift workers. I think nurses get overtime. Anybody that works overtime, he says no taxes on overtime. That's going to be huge in the Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. A lot of construction workers there, not just construction workers, a lot of manufacturing workers there. That's what I meant to say. And that is going to be a big win for them. And I'm just looking forward to Kamala Harris coming out next week saying, I am proposing no taxes on overtime. She steals everything else from Trump. Why shouldn't she steal that? That's a big one. And we'll have to watch that one. That's very good. Strong majority say they are not better off under Kamala Harris than Trump. Of course not. Of course not. 57% of registered voters believe they are not better off under the Biden-Harris administration than they were 4 years ago under Donald Trump. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? The poll asked respondents. The majority said no. 37% said yes. 57% said no, and 6% are not sure. 6%, 7% always, they're not sure what their name is. They never know what's going on in these polls. Only 22% believe that income is kept up with inflation. 66% says income has been falling behind. And yet, Kamala Harris is leading every poll because everybody wants to suffer more because she's so cute and she got so much joy and they love her cute little adorable laugh. No. Did you see the rally she had? I believe it was in Greensboro. And they're panning around the crowd. Oh, look at this huge crowd. And I was looking and I said, wait a minute, this doesn't look right because at the front of the crowd, it seemed like the second tier, the second level, went all the way up to the top. But then as they panned around, it looked like the second level was just a little thin line. It's like, that seems odd. And so I got to one part of the video, I stopped it and I zoomed it in. I said, my God, she's got this big black curtains up again. 2/3 of the entire upper level, thousands and thousands of seats, probably 7,000 or 8,000 seats up there, were covered by those black curtains again to make it look like it was full. Once again, deception. And then I'm listening to the audio from this thing when she's speaking. And I mean, there was like 7,500 people there, something like that. And most of those were bussed in. I think they had like 15 people bussed in. And that guy that has the ability to check on the geolocation of the cell phones said a large amount of those were actually people from Georgia and Atlanta, not from Greensboro. They'd been bussed in. You saw the big line of buses there. But when these people cheered, you could hear the cheering on the video. I guarantee you they're piping in cheering noises or they're amplifying that because it sounded like you were on the 50-yard line of the Rose Bowl with 100,000 people in the stands. I mean, it was a deafening roar. You don't get a deafening roar like that from 7,000 people, okay? It was just like, I almost had to take my earphones off. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, it's all fake. Everything about these guys, absolutely and totally fake. Yeah, it's interesting that the Harris campaign keeps saying, Trump's tariffs are inflationary. Well, back when Trump was doing tariffs, our inflation was 1.5%. I think the target inflation is like 2.2%. It was 1.5%. So tariffs are not inflationary. Once again, they're just lying to you. They're lying. That's all they do. In Minnesota, Tim Walz's Minnesota, they just had 5 male convicts who've decided that they are women and they are transferring them to the women's prison. That is going to work out beautifully, I'm sure. I give it about a month before we start hearing about rapes and assaults and all these sort of things. It's crazy. Can you imagine being a lifer in a men's prison, knowing that you'll never, enjoy the company of a woman the rest of your life? And you just say, hey, You know what? I think I'm a woman now. Grow your hair out a little long, maybe put on some lipstick. I'm a woman now. You need to transfer me over to the women's prison. it's, it's ridiculous, but this is Tim Malta's Minnesota that we're talking about here. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Well, folks, that's it. I'm sure there's lots more news we could cover, but I wanted to give this to you guys right now. We working on the technology right now to stream this show every day for on X Live and also on Facebook Live and also on YouTube Live, all at the same time. It's pretty cool how it works. Yeah, and so we're working on doing that. If it's a little glitchy today, I apologize, but it should work very well. You should be able to see this video in my feed live. And then if you want to chat, you can click on it and you can watch it and you can chat amongst yourselves. And you cannot ask me questions in the chat because this is pre-taped. It's much easier for me to pre-tape it than to go live because stuff goes wrong when you're live. And also it's hard for me to focus on what I'm doing and also pay attention to the chat. And then we can have, special ask me anythings or that sort of thing where you're just asking me questions and we can do that. But most times it's easier pre-tape, especially with candidate interviews or people just interviews in general. A lot of folks don't want to go live because stuff can go wrong. And it's hilarious. Have you ever watched a video where, it's live and the person's coming in on, on a feed and their feed drops or they freeze and they're just like, sentence. And it's just like, it's hilarious. Nobody likes to look like that and be frozen like that on screen because everybody screenshots it and then it goes all over the internet and you look like a moron. So we don't do live interviews on this show, but this technology is going to allow us to, be able to, stream this to everybody and also to have it at a consistent time. Now it's Saturday today, so we'll just go ahead and stream it as soon as it's ready. But typically this is going to be 7 p.m. at night that we're going to be streaming these for everybody. And we can record during the day, put the show all together and out the door. And then during the day, we might have little snippets that we put online and upload directly online. But this is going to be the main show that we're doing where I'm just talking about the news that's going on. And people seem to like that. And so I'm really up on the latest news. So that's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in. And God bless you. God bless Donald Trump and God bless America.